Here are the top 10 most valuable and historically important Marvel comics of the year 1965. To make this list, the comics are now worth more than $1,350 in high-grade raw using the Overstreet annual price guide. We're going to count down the top 10 books, starting with number 10 on our list is Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 23. This key issue is the third appearance of the Green Goblin. It's brought to us from creators, writer Stan Lee and artist Steve Ditko. It's the number 10 comic of the year, and it also ranks 170th most valuable Marvel comic of the entire decade of the 1960s. The CGC census is growing at a fast pace. Now we have over 1,500 copies graded, but only 9 copies in the world are grading 9.6 or higher. Heritage Auctions has been auctioning off comics weekly now for 21 years. They've now sold 285 copies of this book, 12-cent cover price, great action cover, creamy white background. Using the Overstreet price guide year by year, we can see that this book's been a really slow mover in the last decade in low grade, and in fact has barely moved at all. However, there is a bit of movement in higher grades as they are much harder to find. And you'll see in the last 10 years, the book has gone up from $11.75 to $13.50. Still not a huge growth, but it's steady, and of course strong sales. This is the most collected Marvel series. And on the CG census overall, there is a 9.8 and 8 9.6s on the CGC census. Ranking 9th of the year is Fantastic Four number 36. This key issue features the first appearances of Medusa and the Frightful Four, which includes Medusa, Sandman, the Wizard, and Pastepot Pete as a villain team. We also have the engagement party for Reed Richards and Sue Storm, cameos by the XMen and the Avengers, Jack Kirby cover art in this issue, and print run estimated at 300,000 copies of this book. Ranks 9th of the year, 150th of the decade. On the census, again, growing at a fast pace, 1,200 copies graded, only 12 9.6s or higher. Heritage has sold 147 copies. Great cover featuring both teams. In the Overstreet price guide, definitely growth in this book in the last 10 years. It's gone up about 2.5 times in lowest grades, and in high grades, the book has tripled. It's now a $1,500 book. On the census, there is a 9.8 and 11 9.6s. Ranking 8th is Journey into Mystery Annual number 1. This is the only annual to make the top 10. That's because this issue, not just only is it a giant size, 72 big pages, but it's the first appearance of Hercules in the Marvel Universe. And we've got the Asgardians and the Gods of Olympus in this issue. Jack Kirby cover art. There is a Canadian edition of this book, but it has a blank back cover. Watch for those. Those are really rare. This book ranks 8th of the year, 138th of the decade. Print run estimated at 200,000 copies. On the CGC census, we now have 767 copies graded, only 6 9.6s or higher. Heritage has sold 126. White background cover on the square bound book. Overstreet price guide growth has been pretty good. Had a huge jump there just in 2020, where the book almost doubled in a single year in all grades combined. So depending when you bought this book, you've definitely made money in the last decade if you bought it before the big jump. On the census, there is a 9.8 and 5 9.6s. Ranking 7th of the year, Journey into Mystery number 112. This key issue features the battle of Hulk versus Thor and artwork by Jack Kirby. 7th of the year, 119th of the decade. Census again growing quite rapidly on this book, almost 1,400 copies graded, 17 9.6 or higher, lots for this book. Even with the white background cover, Heritage has sold 227 copies. In the Overstreet price guide, you can see slow but steady growth. The book has only gone up a little bit in the last 10 years, up from $54 to $62 at the bottom end. And in the high end, we've gone from $1,400 to $1,750. So not huge growth, but still moving. There are 3 9.8s in this book. 14 9.6s, and an unbelievable 37 9.4s. I wonder if copies of this were found in the warehouse, because that's a lot of high-grade copies surviving of this book. Number 6 of the year is Amazing Spider-Man, number 31. First appearances of 3 well-known supporting characters of Peter Parker. We've got Gwen Stacy, Professor Warren, and Harry Osborn. Steve Ditko cover art on this classic cover. There is a CGC 9.6 Twin Cities pedigree copy. Print run estimated at 320,000 copies. It's number 6 of the year, 99th of the decade. And this book's really skyrocketing on the census. Now over 2,300 copies graded, 29.6s or higher. Heritage has sold 257 of this red background cover. In the Overstreet Price Guide, this book has had some nice movement in the last decade. This book has actually almost tripled in low grades and also almost tripled in highest grades. Now a $2,200 book. There are 3 9.8s and 17 9.6s of this one. Next on our list in 5th place is Amazing Spider-Man number 20. This features a new villain, the first appearance of the Scorpion, and it's also his origin issue. We've got cover art by Steve Ditko, print run 320,000 copies, 5th of the year, 98th of the decade. Really jumping in the census, this book in the last couple of years, 2,400 copies graded, 19 super high grade copies. Heritage has now sold 310 copies. Great action cover of the Scorpion and Spider-Man. In the Overstreet Price Guide, slow but steady every year in lowest grades, but you can see it actually peaked in 2011 and then actually fell down a bit. And now it took 4 years to recoup those prices, and now it's definitely moving up. In high grades in the last decade, it's gone from 1,700 to 2,200. So that's a $500 growth in 10 years. On the census, there are 7 9.8s and 12 9.6s. Number 4 of the year is an early issue of Daredevil. Issue number 7 features the first appearance of his now famous red costume drawn by Wally Wood, who has just recently really taken over our tasks at Marvel. This ranks 4th of the year and 75th of the decade. Again, climbing quickly on the census, 1,500 copies graded, only 4 9.6s or higher, very rare at the top end. Heritage has sold 261 of these issues, and we've got a Submariner and Daredevil battle cover. Overstreet Price Guide, this book has really had some major growth in 2019. So you can see in the last decade, the book has gone up about 40% in lowest grades, and the book has gone up about 50% in higher grades. It's now a $2,800 book. There is no 9.8s of this book, but there are 4 9.6s and 11 9.4s. Ranking in 3rd place, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 28, another major key from this series. Molten Man debuts, first appearance. And this book is considered scarce and high grade due to the black cover. Print run estimated at 320,000 copies, ranks 3rd of the year, 68th of the decade. Census again, really growing, almost 2,000 copies graded, 8 9.6s or higher. Heritage sold 375 copies of this dark cover. Using the Overstreet Price Guide, we can see again some really nice growth just in the last couple of years alone. In the last 10 years, it's gone from 81 to 121 in lowest grades and 2,100 to 3,400 in highest grades for raw copies. On the census, there are no 9.8s, but there are 8 9.6s, 15 9.4s. Ranking number 2 of the year, another book that's really exploded just in the last couple of years, XMen number 12, Origin of Professor X, but we also get the first appearance of Juggernaut, one of the X-Men's greatest villains. Jack Kirby cover art, print run estimated 225,000 copies. Number 2 of the year, 66 of the decade. CGC census has exploded, 2,500 copies now. And there's 12 super high grade copies. Heritage has sold 251 of this action cover with a red background. The Overstreet Price Guide went crazy this year. Look at this. The book has literally doubled in all grades in 1 year alone. super high demand for this early X-Men key issue, which has been considered to be underpriced up until now. So if you bought it 10 years ago, you've gone up about 2.5 times in low grade and triple in high grade. On the census, there are 2 9.8s and 10 9.6s, which brings us to the #1 Marvel comic of 1965. Why is this such a big book? It's the first appearance of the Inhumans, which contained the team of Black Bolt, Crystal, Karnak, Triton, and Lockjaw. The book became hot in recent years due to the announcement of a future movie with the Inhumans. This book features Jack Kirby cover and art. There is a curator pedigree collection copy graded 9.8. It's the #1 comic of the year, 65th of the decade. Print run estimated at 300,000 copies. Census has 2,700 copies, 11 high-grade copies, 307 sold at Heritage. Great cover of the main team with a new team in the background. In the Overstreet annual price guide, again, huge growth for this book in 2015 when it actually quadrupled in a single year. So if you bought this book 10 years ago, this book has now gone up 5 times its original price. And in high grade, it's gone up 6.5 times. This has been a huge profit maker over a 10-year period. Now a $3,500 book. There are 6 9.8s and 5 9.6s of this book on the census. Now let's compare the top 10 books of the year on the CGC census. We'll see which books have been graded the most and which ones are the rare ones. So we noticed a trend that as the price tag got higher, it seemed that there were more copies graded. And the book at the top was Fantastic Four 45 with 2,700 copies, followed by X-Men 12 with 2,500 copies, and SpiderMan 20 with 2,400 copies. At the bottom end, the Journey into Mystery Annual #1 only has 767 copies graded, and Fantastic Four 36 has only 1,200. On the high-end spectrum, you'll see every book on the list has a 9.8 except Spider-Man 28 does not, and Daredevil #7 does not. These are literally impossible to find a 9.8 copy of those books. After that, the book that seems to be the most common with the highest grade copies is possibly Spider-Man #20. And also noteworthy is Journey into Mystery 112. On the lowest end, it would seem that it's actually Daredevil 7, which is the toughest book to find overall in the highest grades. There you go. The top 10 most important Marvel comics of 1965. This series continues every week, so please subscribe to this channel, and thanks for watching.